Hello everyone and welcome to Now You're Playing with Power, a Nintendo podcast. We're here at episode 3. We've made it this far, which I think is an accomplishment. And joining me here on such an accomplishing day is Bali. How are you doing?
Hi NYPPQuestions, I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty okay.
You're pretty psyched for episode 3?
Definitely. It's not the best of times for me because I'm in the midst of exams right now. So that's getting me down, so not as much time for the old
But we're
gaming.
squeezing it in for our loyal listeners.
Indeed. We've got to do that, man. We've got to give back. Got to give back, and that's what we're doing. But unfortunately, we do have like 2-week breaks between here, so it's not all been the doldrums of revision. I have played some stuff, so we have plenty to talk about, and we're going to get into that. So I guess we'll just jump into the show. So Bali, how about you lay out what segments we've got coming up today?
Cool, so first we're going to talk about what we've been playing, and then we have some of your questions that you've emailed to us very kindly. And then we are going to talk about our game of the year. So we're going to maybe do a top 3 games each, but also talk about a few others that didn't quite make it.
Yeah, that's going to be Nintendo focused because, of course, this is a Nintendo podcast. So our top 3 will all be Nintendo games, and then I've played stuff from other platforms as well. So I'll probably put those in an honorable mentions thing afterwards, as Bali said. But it'll be a good time, I think, and we'll enjoy it. Yeah, before we jump in again, I just want to say I had mentioned this last time, but we have problems with iTunes, and it's not really working out. I'm not sure when I'll be able to sort that and put some time into figuring out all the iTunes nonsense. But for the moment, the podcast will stay on YouTube. If I'm able to, maybe I'll provide like a download link to a MediaFire file or something, which potentially, if you want to, or you know, a lot of you are tech savvy, unlike Bali here, so
whatever.
You'll probably be able to figure out how to download the YouTube video and turn it into an audio file, because there are lots of websites that do that. So maybe that can work as well. But yeah, as we said, we're going to jump into our what we've been playing segment. So we will start.
On with the show.
On with the show. Okay, so we are going to jump into what we've been playing, and I'm going to kick it over to Bali to wrap up his final thoughts on Zelda, as if we haven't had enough Zelda so far, Bali.
Absolutely, yeah.
Finish it off, eh?
So I completed Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, and overall I'm very happy with it. I had about 4 dungeons to go, and then the final boss, and I am very happy indeed. The main thing I'm happy with about the ending is the plot. So obviously there's effectively 3 cutscenes in the whole game actually, and 3 long ones at least, would you say?
Yeah, probably. I think that the kind of the tent poles are the beginning, and then the point at which you get to the Dark World, and then the ending, essentially.
Yeah, so I really loved what they did with the story here. Everything comes together, little things that you'd maybe forgotten about come back to the foreground, and I don't want to go into spoilers obviously, but it's just done really well in my opinion. The final boss itself, I personally completed second time. I know you did it first time, didn't you, NBZ?
I did, but I had to use 2 full health potions, which I went like those things throughout the entire game, like the monster tails and the horns. Those collectibles that you got, which were basically just for potions, I didn't end up using until right at the end, because I was like, right, this is the final boss. It's gonna be tough. Fuck it, I'm gonna just stock up on everything I can. So I had all 4 bottles, I had 2 fairies, and I had 2 full health blue potions.
Oh, you had all 4 bottles? I'm still missing a bottle, actually.
Yeah, I did. I found the last one, which...
Yeah, I think I was actually maxed out on those monster tails and things and parts by the end of the game and never used any of them, but never mind. Yes, there's one thing they do add at the very end of the game that I won't give away, but I just really, really, really enjoyed. It is involved with the final boss battle, and you know what I'm talking about, NBZ.
I know the exact thing you're talking about, and not going to give spoilers, but yeah, very, very cool. Very.
Not to give spoilers, but get to the end of this game because it's amazing. So,
It's
yeah.
definitely cool. Yeah, I really like that there's these nice twists at the end. Like not only in the story because there are some cool twists how the plot turns out, but also again, as you said, the kind of the mechanics of the final boss battle are very interesting there. So yeah, no, I also really enjoyed the end of the game. I thought that obviously this is a very short Zelda game. It's the least amount of time I've spent completing one, and it just felt so easy to complete. Like there's that compulsion to go through the entire game because you don't spend hours and hours like in dungeons. You're very quickly from one thing to the next, and you always kind of know where you need to go, or you have the choice to wherever you want to go. So I really do appreciate that about the game, and we did talk about a lot about that last time, but it really helped.
What I really like about the end of the game in particular is that a lot of the criticisms, and they're not from me, they're from people like, James Jones on RFN and others I've heard, is that the game is too easy. So first of all, the game's too easy, and it's also, there's not enough story. And I really feel that the end of the game fixes both of those issues in the sense that the final dungeon, I would say, is the longest and the hardest dungeon, and that's quite suitable. And then on top of that, they just pile in a ton of story. And so so for those who are playing through Link Between Worlds thinking, oh, I wish this game was a little tougher and had a bit more story, then I feel like the end of the game suitably makes up for that to some degree. Would you say?
Yeah, in a few ways, I definitely agree with you on the final dungeon. I think that is the full realization of the dungeon structure that they'd put forth in this game. Whereas I know another complaint, of course, is that maybe the puzzles are too simple or it's too easy to get through the dungeons, which I do kind of side on a bit. I do feel that the dungeons weren't really challenging. They were fun to play through, but I was never like stumped at any point. There was never kind of any stopping block that was like, oh god, how do I get through this area and what do I do next? It was very easy to kind of figure out, as long as you had your head around the kind of wall merging mechanic, then you could pretty much swiftly get through dungeons easily. And I think that the final dungeon really did a great job of increasing the complexity and the length to the point at which it was satisfying and tough at the same time, and really put you at a very good position at the end of the game where you're like, okay, I've kind of honed all my skills and I kind of understand the mechanics really well. Now here's the kind of final challenge, and you take it on, and it's really great. I really enjoy it.
So yeah, my final thoughts on Zelda Link Between Worlds personally are really great game. I think I need more time to think about whether it's my favorite Zelda. I think it's obviously, because I've not played in its entirety any 2D Zeldas, unless you count the DS ones, and I even think that it beats those. This is definitely my favorite 2D Zelda. I know that many who have played Link Between Worlds are sort of humming and hawing right now whether it can take the crown of best 2D Zelda. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as saying it's my favorite Zelda, because I'm a bit of a Wind Waker fanboy, as you know, NBZ.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
In the pantheon of ye great Zeldas, it ranks ye highly, I might say. It's not going to topple a 3D one for me, because I just think that those experiences are far more rich, and I know that there's criticism about them being like 50 hours and stuff, but I think that fits like the epic scope of Zelda for me. So I do fall much more on the side of those, but this game's fantastic, man. It's like really great, and we've talked a lot about it, and I think we can probably shut the book on it now. It's done.
One last point. Would you have liked to have seen them do an original 3D Zelda on 3DS? I mean, it's in the name, you know.
I think that could have been very viable, especially because they got the new kind of Ocarina of Time engine up, and Grezzo handled that port of Ocarina, and they very much could have taken that blueprint and just run with a traditional Zelda. I just think that is much more suited to the home console space, and I feel like that's why in this case they decided to go back to the top-down view, and I think like they experiment a lot more in the 2D Zeldas.
Yeah, I feel like they decided, right, we're going to go back to basics, but we will improve it by adding this mechanic and do this and do that, and I think they did that really well. I mean, do you think there's potential in the future for an original 3D Zelda on 3DS? Or do you think that ship has sailed?
I think the most likely scenario we'll find is the Majora's Mask remake, or something of that kind.
I think I agree.
Of course, that engine, as I said, the Grezzo one is already up and running, and they can easily port that over. At least it seems so. Like they did Wind Waker HD in 6 months apparently, so it doesn't
really
seem like
that quick.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be too tough for the 3DS version, because that's obviously much less powerful hardware and should be a lot easier to do. So I think that's probably the next thing we'll see. Whether we'll see another Zelda in this style on the 3DS, maybe at the very end of the 3DS's life cycle, but I'm not looking at anything anytime soon, especially when you consider that the Zelda team is one unit and they work on both handheld and console, so they are going to be working a lot on the Wii U one right now, so there's not really much room for them to be doing anything on the 3DS for a while, I feel. So
excellent. No, I think I agree, and I think that wraps up this chapter of Zelda. Yes, for another 5 years, but anyway.
It'll be back with a vengeance.
Back with a vengeance. So I think, we'll move on to what else we've been playing. So I'm going to talk about what I've been playing other than completing Zelda, and that is completing up 3D Land. I was about to say World. So yeah,
too many worlds and too many lands, man.
Too many worlds, lands, links. Anyway, so I think I got this game last year, but I can't quite remember. Maybe it was the start of this year. I'm struggling to remember. But anyway, I'd played through most of the game, collecting some gold coins, but not maybe all of them. Really just playing the hardest levels in the game, getting every single last thing. So that's completing every level with both Mario and, spoilers, Luigi.
I'm pretty sure that's not a spoiler anymore. In any Mario game, I don't think that is constituted as a spoiler. Yes, you unlock Luigi in most of these games.
Yeah, but did you know that when you complete this game with both of them and get all the flagpoles and all the gold coins that you get Toad?
Yeah.
Did you know that? But anyway, no. That was a massive troll, ignore that. But
yes.
So, like I said, I've been completing the final levels, and I found some of these levels just infuriating, and there's one in particular that I struggled with both when I played it through with Mario and Luigi.
Describe it to me. I'll see if I remember it.
So I think it's the second last special world, or it might be the last. I think it's the second last. Maybe it's the last. It must be the last because you fight Dry Bowser at the end. But anyway,
so long, Dry Bowser.
You fall on the boomerang, bro, at the start of the level, and then you get 10 seconds, implying that you start with 30 seconds and you have to keep killing the boomerang bros in order to get more time to complete the level. And on top of this, it's one of those fire Bowser Castle levels where everything just hits you, and because they're those annoying boomerang bros, they're actually pretty damn frustrating to defeat sometimes.
Yeah.
So I could have just been a massive troll and gone back and got Tanuki suits and kept doing that, but I was like, no, I need to torture myself and I need to just do this with the regular Luigi, regular Mario, and yeah, it was really tough. And it's not so much even the bit with the boomerang bros, it's the fact that you get to Dry Bowser and you have to jump around, avoid his tail, avoid his rings of fire, and avoid his shooting of the fires from his mouth and all that, and you have to in the meantime avoid the boomerang bros, and all at the same time remembering that you're running out of time and you have to keep up the time by defeating more boomerang bros, and it's just a really obnoxious level. And
did they add Shadow Mario to that as well?
No, not to the Hammer Bro. If they included one evil mechanic, they generally didn't tend to include the other evil mechanic.
Yeah, I don't know, I just seem to remember there being a level in the fire where you had Shadow Mario, and maybe there was a timing thing as well. Yeah,
no, that's either the level before or after this one. I want to say before, actually. Anyway, I can't quite remember. But so anyway, I completed this level, got to the end, well, I didn't complete it technically because I got to the end. I was like, crap, I have 1 second left, and then I missed the 100-second timer that's above the button that you use to get rid of Bowser. And then so Dry Bowser falls into the lava, and just as he falls into the lava, it just goes, oh, time's up, oh, start level again. And it's just, and the other thing is about this level is there's no checkpoint, and I think they do that for a number of the special stages, if not all of them. I can't remember.
Yeah, that feels like a very late game EAD Tokyo thing to do, where they will just be massive dicks about it and not put any... Like, you remember the final Galaxy level that we spent, 3 hours trying to beat and never ended up doing?
Yeah.
Where you have 1 health and you don't have any checkpoints, and it is really long.
That level is far harder than the level you unlock in this game, because for the simple reason that I've completed the level in this game, and I told you about this, and you were kind of surprised.
I was surprised that you managed to do it. I just remember playing through that game, doing absolutely everything, getting to the end, getting to that final level, and being like, "This is too fucking hard. I'm done." And I just put it down. I didn't beat that final level.
What I find hilarious about that final level is the music. So the music's not like this end of the world Bowser Castle kind of epic music that they normally introduce in these final levels and things. It goes right back, and even though the background looks a bit like Mario Galaxy, it's like a space background, which is quite nice. Rather than
it does have that feel to it.
Yeah, rather than having some kind of epic music, they just do. They go back to the main theme tune. In case you didn't notice that from my amazing singing. So I just thought that was quite funny because it was just like this happy clappy music while they're torturing you, which is kind of twisted and very, very EAD Tokyo to some degree. So
they are just cruel.
It was crazy, but. So I gave up trying to do that level and looked it up online, I'll admit, and then this guy basically said, all you need is the scarf tanuki. Is that what he's called? The one where you ground pound.
Rock tanuki?
You ground pound and you become iron and you're immune to fire and everything, basically. So you're meant to do it as him, and then it makes all the gliding makes out all the jumps way easier, and then on top of that there's loads of platforming that involves fire where you just have to ground pound and you stay on your green square that moves and ignore all of it, basically. So I did that, and I did that with Mario and Luigi.
So you basically cheated for the end.
Well, I did it all legitly, you know. I didn't use one of those golden tanuki suits that you get at the start of the game, which I don't know, we could maybe talk about, but
yeah, fair enough. Those golden ones are really dumb. The thing that I don't like in this game about the golden tanuki suit is no matter if you never use it, if it turns up once, it locks your entire file out of being shining stars. If it shows up once. So if you want to get through this game without that showing up, you essentially need to get to a point where if you're dying too much on a level, switch off your 3DS and restart, because that's the only way to keep that, without that happening. I think there's a threshold. I'm not sure how many times it is you have to die, but when you get to that point and you're like, okay, I need to just go back. It's one of those bullshit things, which is like, I didn't use it the entire game. Why are you punishing me for not using a thing? It's really dumb.
Just to be clear, it's sort of when you complete the game and you get all the things, you have 5 stars on your file. And from what I've read, if you don't even encounter that special Tanuki tail, those 5 stars will be shining.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That's right. Yeah, okay.
Otherwise, you just get 5 stars for doing everything else in the game. So that's
So, but overall, I absolutely love this game. It's definitely one of my top games on the 3DS. Obviously, I don't own many games on the 3DS, but it's easily.
Let me ask you, what did you think about having to go through the entire game essentially twice? Because if you want to get the final level, which is oh so elusive and involves a lot of time, you have to go through this game with Mario and with Luigi. Did you think that was a thing that you would have appreciated not doing, or was it okay?
I have mixed feelings on it, to be honest. I mean, it's almost like they extend the game in 2 ways. First of all, they give you these special levels, which I only just realized upon playing them so closely together with the original levels, that they're basically the original levels with tweaks. So that tweak might be an extra jump, an extra doohickey here or there, or Shadow Mario chasing you, or the time limit like we were talking about earlier. So it's effectively 8 worlds, and then the special 8 worlds are just the original 8 worlds with little bits fixed here and there. And then on top of that, obviously, you have the Luigi extension strategy, which I enjoy a lot, actually. So, I mean, had they not had those extension strategies, it probably would have taken me like, I don't know, like 10, 12 hours. But because they had them, I think this game took me like 20 hours or something. So, I like the idea that there's more stuff for me to do, even if it wasn't a whole lot of development. I'm kind of happy with that. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
You know, I actually didn't mind whatsoever, because when I was playing this game, I did it in a very short period of time, and I was effusively like in love with how good it was in terms of using the 3D, and how nicely the levels were designed, and how short and just pick up and play those levels were. That I essentially would play it throughout the day, where I'd be like, pick it up, do like a world, and put it down, then pick it up, do another world, and put it down. And just the way that I was playing it kind of lended towards like, when I went through it again, I was just like running quickly through the levels and kind of just enjoying the scenery and the view and that kind of thing, and not really being too troubled by the challenge a lot of the time. I actually didn't find this game super challenging, although I may have lost a lot of lives. Like I never really found that sense of frustration, which is weird, because I'm finding that a lot with 3D World. Funnily, we'll talk about that next week or next show. But it's strange, because I never really got very frustrated with 3D Land, and yet it's happening quite a bit to me in 3D World.
I'd say this is harder than Galaxy.
That is insanity.
Really?
Yeah, I cannot agree with that. I cannot agree with that. I guess
I'm talking about Galaxy 1, but
yeah, but I mean,
really?
like, there are stars in Galaxy 1, you know, from watching my LP, that made me want to just fucking shoot people in the face. That game has horrible stars, like that one purple coin mission where you're on that moving platform and you have to get them underneath the platform and you have to jump through lasers and shit, and it is unbearable. Like, that is a horrible level, and the designers are just cruel for even including it in the game. There was never a level that put me to that point of rage in 3D Land, not one.
I don't know, maybe I'm a bit nullified from those 3D Marios from playing Sunshine, but anyway.
I guess.
So yeah, overall, absolutely love this game. Like I said, going to pick up 3D World in the near future, and I will give you my feedback on that. Absolutely loved it. So, moving on, NBZ, what have you been playing?
Okay, so yeah, we just have time for me to talk about a game that I've been playing, not on a Nintendo platform, but man, this game is such a Nintendo game. Oh my god, it's Tearaway, and this is on PlayStation Vita. I really feel like no one is going to play this game, which is unfortunate, not only because it's on a platform Vita where no one owns it, but also because it came out at the worst time ever, on the same day as Xbox One and as both of the Nintendo Titans. Like, god damn, the worst timing ever, because if this game had come out in, you know, maybe like a month ago, and the doldrums when not much was being released, I think a lot more people would have been interested in it and been able to pick it up.
Do you think there's some sort of twisted strategy where little kids go, "Mom, I want this game," and they get it confused and buy Tearaway?
No, I don't think that's gonna happen. Honestly, but yeah, no, Tearaway is just a magical experience. It's one of those games where the actual mechanics and the kind of the challenge of the game isn't what's important. The experience is central here, and so it is a platformer in essence. It's a 3D platformer, but like, you don't get the ability to jump until maybe half an hour, 40 minutes into the game. And the interesting and really innovative thing about Tearaway is how it uses the hardware of Vita. This game really could not be done on any other platform, simply because of all the different interfaces and features that the Vita has. So for example, the first thing that it kind of shows you is using the front camera. You are basically a part of the game. You're part of the experience. The entire premise is that this little guy who is essentially an envelope with legs and arms and everything is delivering a message to you. And so he has to basically go through this world and platform all his way through the challenges and get to you, and you are in the sun. And so at the beginning of the game it shows like
Teletubbies.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's the Teletubbies. You're the Teletubby baby. It is, you know, when you were a child, that was the main celebrity in the world of children's television was the Teletubby baby. Now you, as a grown up, can now experience.
Wonder how that guy's doing now.
It's a girl, and I'm pretty sure I looked up something and she was on some website or something, and yeah, it was pretty weird. It was pretty trippy. It's like, wow, she was the Teletubbies baby. Anyway, let's not derail here.
Derailing it, sorry.
So yeah, you're basically in the sun, and inevitably when you see your face on screen, you just feel the need to pull faces, and that's what I did. I was just like, just like looked like an idiot in the sun. And there are points in the game where you get to take pictures of yourself. And then later on, those pictures will be like scattered throughout the place, and you'll like see your face on stuff, and it's just really trippy. Like, they also do this thing at one point where they say, okay, take a picture of yourself like with your mouth open, take a picture of yourself with your eyes closed, take a picture of yourself looking normal, and they'll take those 3 pictures and do like a mini kind of slideshow thing where it flips
that's
through
incredible.
them. So it's like your mouth opening, your eyes closing, and then like a normal face, and it just looks really funny. It's really clever, like how they implement that stuff. And a lot of the times what Tearaway does is it sets something up that will then come back later on. So, for example, a lot of the game involves a lot of crafting. And this is not kind of crafting in the sense of like a Little Big Planet where you kind of have like a stage and you have items and you place them there, nor is it the type of crafting in like Minecraft when you're like building buildings, that kind of thing. It's paper craft, and because this entire game is built around the idea of paper and that kind of like origami, that you essentially have a cutting board and you have the touchscreen to utilize to like cut out objects and stuff, and you can layer paper on top of each other. You have multiple colors of paper, and so there's this one instance where it asks you to make a snowflake, and so like I made a snowflake which was blue, and it was like a ninja star, and it had like little indents inside of it, and it wasn't perfect, it wasn't super neat because I'm not very good at crafting, and surprisingly the Vita touchscreen is really good for doing like kind of cutting things out and making things look real nice, and the kind of the tools they used with the scissors and everything, and kind of tracing your outline works really well. And so I made my snowflake, and you get to this area and it's snowing, and the snow is made up of the snowflakes that you made, and it's so cool because you see your creations being implemented into the game world, and then like later on it'll snow again and you're like, oh yeah, that's a snowflake that I made earlier. It's just really cool because like you're putting so much of yourself into the game, and it's essentially world building without having to mess with like you know, the major pieces. It's all these little things, all these very tiny and seemingly like not really necessary or important things, but they really influence and impact the experience in a really cool way.
I read or heard somewhere that there are parts of the game where they actually sort of teach you origami. Is this right?
Well, not really. What it does is there are you have a camera which you like an in-game camera, and you can take pictures of things. So sometimes objects will be white, and you have to give them color by just taking a picture. Taking a picture of them like gives them color, and then it will add that item that you've taken a picture of to your like scrapbook, I guess. And you can essentially go into this menu and get a link to a website where it will show you a printout, or you can go to the website and print out the papercraft model and make the papercraft model in real life, basically, which is really cool. That's basically how it works. So like you take a picture of a pig and you go to the website, print out the page which has the pig on it, cut it all out.
Is this an official website or?
Yeah, it's an official website
cool.
from Media Molecule, and And it's really nice, actually. Like that doesn't happen often, where you have this kind of real world things colliding with the in game, but it happens a lot in Tearaway. And another way in which it happens is the use of the back touch. So Vita obviously has this feature of the back touch screen, which
I've
up till
never
this
fully
point,
understood back touch.
it doesn't seem like a feature that's necessary. It just kind of seems like a very gimmicky thing that was kind of slapped on there because it was like, oh, hey, this is interesting and no one else has done this, so let's do it, kind of thing. But in essence, it actually works really well. In this game anyway, Media Molecule really know how to kind of pull innovation out of a system. The way, because they use every aspect of Vita. They use the front camera, they use the front touchscreen, they use the back touch, they use the gyro controls, the motion controls. Everything is completely used in this game, and it's really fantastic.
Overall, your favorite game on Vita?
Well, I haven't really played a huge amount on Vita. I've been playing Gravity Rush, I played Batman, obviously, but I think like this is the game which justifies Vita as a platform in terms of everything that it can do. Like all of the features are utilized, and it's just really interesting. Now, my thoughts come back to me now. Talking about the back touch, is you essentially like put yourself into the game because you touch it with your fingers on the back, and your finger will like pop up in the game world, and you'll be able to use that to either kill some enemies or like push some blocks or whatever. I think that's such an neat and interesting way, and it makes you feel like you're really part of a game world in ways that games really don't do usually. And it's not really breaking the fourth wall because it lays out from the beginning there is no fourth wall. Like you this is the adventure for him to get to you, and so that's kind of just the premise from the beginning.
Any final thoughts?
Well,
I was going to say, is it your game of the year? But then I was going to say that you have to find out.
Well, I guess. Obviously, it can't be my Nintendo game of the year, but it's really high up my list. I really think it's such a fantastic experience, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It continually throws new things at you. Of course, like my criticisms would come like the combat isn't very interesting. It's just kind of, dodge out the way, pick up a thing and throw it at another thing. You get some stuff later on which makes it a little bit more interesting, but that's not the focus of the game. And there's no penalty for dying. You can die as many times as you want, and you'll just respawn immediately where you were. Nice. So that's not an issue whatsoever. It doesn't really punish you. It just wants you to enjoy the experience, which I really appreciate. I will say, like, some of the back touch stuff can get clunky because sometimes you'll have to push blocks out the way with your fingers while still having control over the analog stick to move your character across the kind of the area that you're trying to get him through. So that can be a little bit of a problem. But otherwise, no, I think that it is an incredible experience, and I finished the game. I'm done with it, but it is. I definitely think I should show you this over Christmas, and you should just have a look at it because it's such a Nintendo game, and Media Molecule is a studio which I feel Sony are very lucky to have because it gives them that Nintendo quality, and it gives them like diversity in their first party lineup, which is really great for them. So
awesome.
That's it. That's Tearaway, and that is going to wrap up our What We Have Been Playing segment. So we are going to take a break here, and we will return with your listener mail. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the show. We are now going to jump into some listener mail. Thank you very much for sending those in. We have like 5 questions this week, which is a step up from last time, but we want to make that more, so definitely keep sending that in. The email address is nyppquestions@gmail.com, and we will essentially read everything that we get, unless it is profane and not really related to games, so
or horrendous in general.
yeah, and if it's just plain bad, we probably won't. But I have faith. So
we have faith.
We do indeed. So let's kick this off. Bally, you have the question. So
cool. So I have the first question here. Hello, and thank you for reading my question. I was wondering if either of you guys have played Xenoblade Chronicles. I picked it up on Black Friday, and I love it so far. Not done it yet, but I just wanted your guys' opinion on it. Thank you once again for reading. And that's from Hunter.
Okay. So Xenoblade is a game that frustrated me when I first bought it because I was playing it with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. Let me tell you, do not play that game with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. It is a awful setup, and it will...
How come?
Okay, so basically the way that the combat works in that game means that you have to do a lot of menu navigation, and the thing with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck is there just isn't enough buttons to to get through those and to be able to effectively get all your actions out and sorted and do it in a quick manner and do it in a kind of in an easy way. Like, it just makes the whole thing clunky. It's very hard to be able to play that game with that control setup. So I would say, I guess you probably are, but play this thing with a classic controller, or Classic Controller Pro is what I recommend. That's the reason. The reason I bought a Classic Controller Pro was to play Xenoblade, and it's as simple as that. I had to get it because I got to a point where I was a very, very early boss, and I just got frustrated because I couldn't beat it. So I left. Like, I started playing Xenoblade. It came out in 2011, I think. And I started playing it and didn't get very far, and like a year later I got the Classic Controller Pro and jumped straight into it, and that is when I really started to understand what people were saying about this game and why it was getting such critical, praise from everywhere, and people were saying like it's the best JRPG in years, and there are many reasons for that, because it just does things that are so much more convenient and streamlined than other JRPGs do. Like, for example, when you take on a quest, once you complete that quest, you don't have to go back to the person who gave it to you. You just finish the quest and get the reward for doing it without having to kind of go throughout that entire process. The quick travel system in the game is fantastic. You can quick travel to anywhere you want from wherever you want. You could be in the middle of a boss battle and you could quick travel out of it and then quick travel back there. Like, it just makes things so much easier to do, and especially because Xenoblade has a world which is so large. Like, this world is fucking giant. The first like major grassy plains area that you get to is bigger than the entire game world of Ocarina of Time. Like, it is massive. This field just goes on forever and ever, and that's one area. There's another area later on which is a giant lake which has like floating cities in the air and a lake underneath, and it's just like the scope of this game is ginormous, and it's just incredible how they were actually able to fit it onto the Wii, because it's very difficult when that hardware is not as powerful as the other two systems. At this point obviously we've moved on, but at that time, like, there was this huge divide where it didn't seem like it was possible to do that kind of a game on Wii, and yet it is, and there is obviously there's limitations, and there's kind of problems with graphical fidelity at points. Like, the character models are pretty bad, and that kind of thing, and voice acting is solid, I feel, but like, lip syncing there is non-existent. They basically just don't move their mouths at all, which is kind of funny. But I mean, there's kind of like the thing that's impressive about Xenoblade is its scope, and like the kind of, you stand on a bridge and you look out and there's a waterfall and you think, I want to go over there, and you can. Like, it's one of those games where it's like, okay, I can actually move around this map, and it's fucking crazy, man. I'm really, really enjoying it. And I say still enjoying it because it's a long game.
How many hours are you in?
Okay, it's a bit weird, like how I kind of categorize length in games because I've played Pokemon for 200 hours and I don't see that as a thing, but it's because Pokemon's a different game and I play it differently from most people. But I put like 35 hours into Xenoblade, and for a traditional game, that's like a full length. Xenoblade is like twice that length. I've heard people say 70, 80 hours. And I feel like I've done quite a lot, but I know there's more to it. I know that I've hardly like scratched the surface, and there's so many areas and so many places to go to, and like it's just ginormous. And I don't know. I don't know, man. It's a fantastic game. The thing, like, I want to go back to it, but there's so much to play right now, and like I have all these new things, these PC games. I have stuff on Vita, on PlayStation Plus. I have 3DS games to catch up on. Like, there's so much to do that finding time to go back to Xenoblade and jumping back into that world is kind of tough. But I do want to do it. I do want to get there, and I will go back to it. So I hope you're enjoying it, Hunter. I think that you should definitely stick with it and just try and finish the thing before it kind of wears on you, because I know that in the end, like, it probably will. You get to these points in games where it's just like, oh, just finish already. Like, come on, I feel that way with Mario and Luigi Dream Team right now. That's a game which I enjoy, but it's just like overstaying its welcome, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, Xenoblade. Any thoughts on Xenoblade, Bally? You've probably heard a lot about it.
Well, as you can maybe have guessed from my silence, I've not played this game and don't own it. I don't really have the time for this game, to be honest.
Fair enough.
I don't know if it's my style, but there's definitely a large number of games above it on my list of what I want to play. So
yeah, there you go.
Anyway, shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I recommend if you have like weeks where you are doing nothing, play Xenoblade. It'll be a good time. So there you go.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, I've got quite a long question here, but I'll give it a bash. So here we go. Breathe. Dearest NBZ and Bally Fitness, first of all, I'd like to say that it's nice to have discovered a podcast that delivers a strikingly familiar format to something that happens to have the same initials as Reggie Fils-Aimé. We're seriously one raspy-voiced American who happens to be an international football fan greeting us with "Ahoy hoy everyone," away from going into bizarro uncanny valley territory. On to the meat and potatoes here, though. I'd like to ask your opinions on the recent experimental things that the two big Nintendo blockbusters that came out close to Black Friday, and what suddenly gave those two series that were in serious danger of stagnation a much needed kick in the caboose. Is it perhaps something that is happening out of old producers finally getting less controlling over games, or is it perhaps out of desperation from poor sales numbers, do you feel? Would this breath of fresh air proliferate between other franchises or even stay consistent in their own? Particularly with The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds, they took a big gamble to try and break the shackles of monotony that franchise has been chained to with the drastic changes to the item and dungeon structure. But will they try that again for something that hybridizes the best of this and the more Ocarina of Time-esque games? Or will they fall back into the narrative bogged, linear and congested dungeon structure that sold oh so many N64s oh so many years ago? Sorry if that was a bit long. Klex Yoshi.
Very long and very detailed question. It's an ordeal that Bally has gone through to read.
I'm gonna have a drink.
Yeah, you take one. Deserve it. Yeah, thank you, Klex Yoshi, for this. It's a very interesting question. Shout out to him, actually, because he is, of course, a fellow RFN listener. RFN being Radio Free Nintendo, a podcast that Bally and I...
Plug.
Yeah, the Radio Free Nintendo on iTunes. Go check them out. They are fantastic. And we listen to them. Actually, episode's coming out tonight, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, and I actually bumped into him. He was on the, not in real life, of course. He was on the charity live stream for Nintendo World Report, and he was like on the chat, and he said hi to me, which was nice. So awesome. So let's tackle this question, shall we, Bal? This is a lot of stuff to get through here.
Yes.
So we're basically talking about how Nintendo are being a bit more experimental with Link Between Worlds and with Super Mario 3D World, and how that's why that's come about. I think we'll start with like
start with Mario, and then because I think he delves deeper into Zelda.
Yeah, okay. We'll start with Mario. So, talking about like the producers getting less controlling. I know that there's been a lot of word of Miyamoto stepping back in a lot of his roles. Like, no longer is he going to be overseeing projects. Like, that's mainly what his role is at this point. Like, he doesn't really develop games, he doesn't work on games, but he does have a lot of final says in things, and he can just flip the table. He has the authority to do that, where he will come on a project and be like, I don't like this, and then just tell them to change everything. So I think that is a factor, perhaps. I'm not sure whether he was involved in overlooking 3D World, but I don't actually feel that 3D World actually is stepping away too much from what Mario has been doing as of recent, because 3D World is very much 3D Land with crazier ideas and multiplayer, and I feel like that's how it's working, honestly.
Yeah, I would definitely say that there's more original content that they've piled into Zelda than Mario. I mean, I've not played Mario yet, obviously, but I think, like you said, if from what you said, that the emphasis is on multiplayer and just the development of the 3D Land levels, then I don't think that's a massive change. I mean, it's obviously huge that you're having proper multiplayer in a 3D Mario. That's big, but it's maybe not unexpected.
I haven't had a chance to try it yet, so I can't actually comment on that and how much it really does change the feeling and the tone of the game. But in single player, it does feel very similar to 3D Land, in some aspects weaker, but I'll get on to that when I actually talk about the game in more detail. But the irony here is that Zelda is set in a world which a lot of people are familiar with, and yet it takes like that setting and flips it on its head because of the new mechanic with the wall merging and because of the open-ended structure of how dungeons work. So it's kind of strange there because 3D World is brand new content. Link to the Past, Link Between Worlds, just bloody Freudian slip, is a new experience in the kind of the coat of an old one. But
yeah, I think that Link Between Worlds is really, 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 really original, even though they have the same overworld.
Yeah.
I think that the wall mechanic is incredible. We've already been over that a number of times. I think that the ability to do all dungeons in any order is a really cool. I'm still undecided on how much of a fan of that I am, but I think it's a really nice addition, and I'm glad they tried it out, even if they do go back to, as you described, the narrative bogged, linear and congested dungeon structure. I mean, you suggest, Klex Yoshi, that you're not a fan of the heavy story-based Zeldas, so perhaps Link Between Worlds was really one that you liked, in the sense that there's very large gaps between plot hooks.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think that's probably his angle on this. But talking about like looking at sales numbers and desperation from poor sales numbers, do you think that has a bearing here? Like, is that why ultimately they have gone in this direction with Zelda and with Mario?
I think that's interesting because he's suggesting that what sold, as he quotes, oh so many N64s oh so many years ago, was the fact that Ocarina was narrative bogged, as he puts it. And I think that Nintendo, I mean, we should really find out like sales figures of Zeldas. I mean, I bet, obviously, I think Ocarina of Time is probably the most sold.
It's probably up there, definitely.
After that, I would put my money on one of the DS ones, maybe Phantom Hourglass, to be honest.
Oh, definitely. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the DS ones was the top selling, just because of the success of that system and the fact that they were appealing to a much wider audience with the touch-based controls and everything. Phantom Hourglass could well be one of the best-selling Zeldas, yeah.
Or even though Wind Waker is loved by many, including me, it's definitely way off the pace in terms of sales because there were so few GameCubes sold in comparison to, say, the Wii. So I'm sure something like Twilight Princess would far outstrip Wind Waker, even though I would put them in a similar area in terms of how good those games are. So I think that purely relating how good the game is to sales is a very misty, murky path, to be honest.
And I mean, like, I don't think that like, Mario is very much an iteration on the 3DS game, and that game sold really well. And I feel like they are actually perhaps going more in that direction because things like Galaxy and Sunshine didn't sell that well. Like, Galaxy sold solidly, but it doesn't even come close to New Super Mario Brothers. Like, the 2D games, the 2D Mario games just skyrocket in terms of sales compared to the 3D ones.
That's why we have 4.
yeah, I know, it's frustrating, but I mean, we're not going to get into that because that's a whole other thing.
That's another rant.
But like, what they did with 3D Land is that they took really cool aspects of both and merged them together, and it's much more of a 3D game, but when you look at it, it kind of has the appeal of the 2D games, and so that game sold quite a lot more than like a standard normal 3D Mario game would sell. So I think that does have a factor to play in the fact that we're not getting a Galaxy style game on Wii U. Nintendo believes, I think, that a game in a similar style to 3D Land will sell better, just because it will appeal to a wider audience, and people aren't as intimidated by it, as well as the fact that adding multiplayer means that it adds that more casual element, and it's something that they did implement in the 2D games, which were much more successful. So maybe they're trying to piggyback off that to some degree, which is why you'll feel maybe that's why they're doing it for a monetary standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the formula for producing a good selling Mario game compared to a good selling Zelda game are completely different, and I'm talking in the sense that, like you were saying, NBZ, where 2D Mario sold really well, we better bring out 3 more, sort of thing, and that's a very simplistic formula that Zelda would never do, in a sense. I mean, you could argue that something like Twilight Princess is a safe bet, but I would personally argue that they, even with that game, went for some really original stuff with the whole transformation into the wolf, and it was actually quite a sort of dark plot, and on top of that, a very long game. So I don't think with Zelda that there's a formula that Nintendo just think, right, tick the boxes, gonna sell well.
What I will say is that because this Zelda game is so heavily crutching on nostalgia for Link to the Past, that is a way, I think, especially in terms of marketing and trying to get this game to sell, calling it A Link Between Worlds and having that loophole back to the classic, which is so revered, is definitely a specific money-making strategy. They could have put this out there and set it in a new Hyrule in a different area, but they deliberately made the choice to set it in that familiar place, which means that it will gain more traction than just a standard new release would, I feel.
No, absolutely. And I'm just thinking back to other Zeldas that you could argue are almost cookie cutter. I was going to say perhaps Spirit Tracks based on Phantom Hourglass. Now, obviously the games are very different in many ways, but at the same time they're ultimately the same engine. No steam engine pun intended. but they have the same basic set out layout, and I think that Phantom Hourglass, we are hinting at, sold very well, even though we're not 100% sure. We think it did. So for that reason, they were probably like, right, well, let's pump out another DS Zelda. And I think Spirit Tracks came out quite quickly after Phantom Hourglass, I seem to remember. It was less than 2-year gap or something.
It was around a 2-year gap, yeah, I do believe, which is pretty interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so do you think that that this is going to stick? Do you think this is Nintendo's MO now with Zelda, is that they're going to try and be a bit more creative with the structure, or if they're going to I personally, I feel that on the Wii U game they're gonna go for more of a kind of sitting on the fence between the story-based stuff and the kind of open-ended stuff. What do you think?
I think with the 3D Zeldas, and especially now that this is going to be the first HD Zelda, I think they are going to pile in the story, personally. And I really felt they did that with something like Twilight Princess, which I really enjoyed, and I'm completely against Klex Yoshi and sort of describing it as narrative bogged. I would never use that word with a Zelda story, but I think that the Wii U Zelda will definitely be heavy on narrative, personally.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, there you go. I think that they're doing very interesting things with both of these franchises, and I'm really kind of looking forward to what the next EAD Tokyo Mario will be. Whether they're just gonna keep going in this direction, or hopefully we'll go back to kind of more Galaxy style, more Sunshine style 3D game. And
it will be interesting.
Definitely. So yeah, thank you very much.
Should we move on to the next question?
We shall move on.
Thank you, Klex Yoshi. That was a great question. Where are we going?
More Zelda, apparently.
It is indeed. Just a quick question I would like your opinions on. I just finished Ocarina of Time on 3D. It was my first Zelda game and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Eventually I will do the Master Quest, but I think I want to play another Zelda before I tackle the Master Quest. What would you guys recommend? Should I play A Link Between Worlds or an older one?
Who's that from?
Off? He doesn't say. Well, his name in the email, I don't know if he wants his real name read out, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
We'll just say Lucas.
We'll say Lucas, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so great opportunity for Ocarina of Time 3D to be your first Zelda game, especially seeing as in this day and age I would expect it to be a more original one. But that's the good thing about Nintendo doing these re-releases. There are lots of people who haven't played them, and no, it's fantastic that could be your first one, which is really awesome. I would say that it would be a good idea to go for A Link Between Worlds just because you already own a 3DS, and it also allows you to see the difference between the style of game that the 3D Zeldas kind of implement and see like how different the 2D ones are, because I think Zelda actually made a very smooth transition from 2D to 3D because they are very similar, but the way that the game plays is pretty different, especially in terms of like combat and stuff. So I would definitely recommend that you would go for Link Between Worlds. Bally, are you going to say that too?
I'd throw in another game, obviously, but, and it's not for no reason other than it's my favorite game, but it's for the reason that it's also a remake, and that's Wind Waker HD. I don't personally own the HD remake yet, but I've watched speedruns of it on Twitch and things like that, and it looks incredible. And I'd say not from the 2D, 3D sort of counterpoint argument, but from a more kind of, the Ocarina of Time plot, and you want a game that follows from that plot in a really creative way. I would say Wind Waker is really good at that. From the start of the game, they introduce you to what happened during Ocarina of Time and how the world has changed and developed. And on top of that, it's an incredibly different game to Ocarina, and it's very much... And it's actually quite a straightforward 3D Zelda to some extent. It's not overly difficult. There's certainly not in terms of enemies. There's a few puzzles and things that are tricky, but I'd highly recommend Wind Waker in terms of following on from Ocarina of Time 3D. At the same time, I still agree with you, NBZ, that A Link Between Worlds would be a really great balance of what does a 3D Zelda feel like, what does a 2D one feel like, and like I said earlier, it's my favorite 2D Zelda that I've played. So
yeah, no,
one of those two for sure. Obviously, we don't know if you own a Wii U. So
exactly, I was about to say if you don't own a Wii U, then that's a little bit of an investment you'd have to go with.
Then you should buy the Zelda Wii U.
Yeah, buy the Wind Waker HD bundle. But
it's good value.
Definitely,
yeah.
No,
I wish I had done it.
That is another good one because it is so relevant right now with the remake coming out. And it does link nicely into Ocarina. It is of a much larger scope, and it does enough things different that you will feel that it's very refreshing.
Exactly,
So
and at the same time, a lot of the combat feels similar, so you'll have no problem with working that out.
with Z targeting and that kind of
Z
stuff.
targeting and all that fun stuff. But
Yes.
anyway,
Okay.
shall we move on to the next question?
We shall indeed.
Okay, so this is from Meowth900 again. I've noticed that you guys in the UK have been getting many games before us here in North America, such as Bravely Default and Professor Layton. Have to admit I'm jealous. Are you enjoying getting the games before us? Because I'm sure as hell not.
I am loving it. No, I think that we're seeing a lot more simultaneous releases rather than us getting it months in advance. It's much more of a level playing field right now than it used to be. Certainly the case with, like, obviously Pokemon was a worldwide release. There was some stuff earlier this year. I believe Luigi's Mansion came out here a couple of days earlier. The way it generally works is because games on Nintendo platforms in Europe are released on Friday, whereas in America games are released on Sunday. So generally what happens is that if it's going to be a worldwide release, Europe will get it 2 days early because of the fact that it is released on a Friday as opposed to a Sunday. So that happens quite a bit. But there are still cases where America gets it first, and I do think that actually it's more the cases where America gets it first. Like, Fire Emblem was still a month earlier than here in Europe. I had to wait for that. Obviously, the big examples are like Xenoblade, which came out here months earlier, like half a year earlier, because of that whole kerfuffle with Project Rainfall and all that kind of stuff. But I do feel in general it's becoming more aligned. And we did have to deal with a lot of bullshit for a lot of years. So,
oh God. In fact, we were talking about RFN earlier. I'm actually listening, as you know, to the backlog of RFN, and I'm currently at the start of 2008. So basically, Super Smash Brothers' Brawl has just come out, and Greg Leahy from the UK basically can't play it because it's not come out in the UK. And I was just remembering how long we had to wait for Smash Brothers Brawl, and it was torturous, and it was horrible. And I'm really glad that they're trying harder and harder to bring out stuff nearer across the world. It's really nice.
It makes a lot of sense though, because like this is a global economy. Like people do not want to wait on like region locking and that kind of thing. It's a lot of bullshit that they've actually implemented that into 3DS and Wii U, because it's like, come on, get with the times, guys. You should do this anyway. It's their way to try and stop piracy, but it's not going to stop piracy no matter what you do. Like, piracy cannot be stopped. It's one of those things which is it's much more of, a lot of people say that piracy is a service problem. And that is totally true when it comes to things like Steam. Steam is an incredible service, and the prices are so tempting and so well placed that it's much more convenient for me to spend money and get a game on Steam than it is for me to go and pirate it. Because I could pirate any game on PC. I could do that, but it's me going out of my way, and it's much more of an easy experience. So I think that's what people and companies need to focus on much more. So yeah, that's really
cool.
what I think.
Excellent.
But yeah, no, it's good that we are getting stuff earlier. Bravely Default as well is one thing that's coming out in February in the US, but it came out like last week here, and that's another JRPG that there's lots of hardcore fans for those kind of games, and I know that the thing is, the irony here is that those games require a lot of localization, and Europe is the place where there is the most localization required, because there are like 6 languages that it has to be translated into. So people would think, like, why don't you just take the English and just put it into the American version? But I guess there are some other issues at hand there. I honestly don't know what the QA process is and everything.
It's like, don't they have to do a French version for the bilingual Canada?
Oh, they probably do, but
like
I mean, French is already done here in Europe, so
I know,
it doesn't make a lot of sense. But
reasons,
whatever the reasons are, I just think it is nice that things are kind of getting realigned, which is definitely good, and
it is good.
Excellent. So we'll look forward to more of that, and we'll look forward to getting more games before you. So.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Right. My question is, what games do you play or plan to play now that you have a good PC? Bally, if you have a PC, then you can answer as well. I'm getting a PC after my GCSEs, and I would like to know what sort of games to buy next summer. I like similar types of games to both of you, and I don't want to buy everything in the Steam sales. Thanks, 12 Kezo.
Okay. So Bali has a Mac, so he is an inferior human being.
And before my Mac crashes just right now as we're recording.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to play a game on your Mac before? Aside from like Flash games?
My friend Shaq tried to he downloaded SimCity 4 or something, and I was playing it for a bit, and then it just overheated and was bad, and never mind. But yeah.
Your experience with PC games goes back to like Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, no,
I used to, like the Star Wars like strategy Gungan Swamp game.
Oh, that was such a good game. Such a good
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
No,
I remember
no
wanting
idea.
to find it years later and couldn't find it for the life of me, and it's so sad. But anyway,
yeah.
This isn't about me. What were you suggesting?
Yeah.
This person
So
should play
I have over 100 Steam games, which is somewhat insane. But that's just the thing with Steam is like sales happen and you buy stuff and then you don't play it. So I don't know, man. It's just how it goes. And the thing with PC gaming is it's so cheap and easy because you put the initial investment in of spending so much money. You get so much out of it in terms of the games, and that's what I'm feeling, especially with like humble bundles and everything, where you can set whatever price you want and get loads of games. It's really great. There's lots of indie stuff that I recommend. Most of the stuff that I've finished and played on PC are indie games. I think this is a game on Wii U as well, but Trine 2 is a fantastic platformer. It's a physics-based platformer and lots of puzzles. It's much more of a puzzle-based game than it is a platformer, because the platforming is relatively simple, but it's just the mechanics of actually getting to places and placing stuff. It's almost like a physics sandbox. Like, the thing with Trine 2 is you will find resolutions to puzzles that maybe like you didn't even think were possible, because the physics engine just goes that far with it. Like, it's pretty crazy how detailed and how well it works. But that's one I recommend definitely. I'd say Mark of the Ninja, one of my favorite games I played this year. It came out last year, but I played it this year. That game is utterly fantastic. As someone who is not a fan of stealth or stealth games whatsoever, this completely flipped me. Like, the thing with stealth games that I find a lot of the time is the real frustration of being spotted and having to start an area over and not knowing what you were doing wrong or why you were spotted or what the AI ticks are and how you're able to get past them. Mark of the Ninja is a game which shows you everything, and it's 2D as well, which makes like you have the entire playing field in front of you and you know what can be seen and you know where you're hidden, and it's just such a sublime experience. It's so smooth and quick paced and just a lot of fun. So I recommend that. Definitely Portal, either of the Portal games, fantastic. You can get those on console as well, but they're great on PC, and kind of first person games and with the mouse work really well. So don't really have much to say on Portal other than they're fantastic and you should play them. I guess other like PC exclusive games, like one of my favorite games this year, which I'll talk about in the Game of the Year segment, is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. That game is utterly fantastic. It's like a 3-hour experience, but it is one of those experiences that will stay with me for like a very, very long time. It's spellbinding, really. It's just amazing, and it's another kind of puzzly based platformer, but it has a really cool story built into it, and the entire story told without any dialogue whatsoever. It's storytelling through gameplay, which is something that is extremely unique and not many games have been able to pull off. So that one I definitely highly recommend. There's loads here, and I would go through my entire list, but we are running low on time, so I guess those are some quick hits that I would point you towards and say definitely go try those out. But there's a ton of stuff on PC and a load of interesting games, so that's going to be that.
Awesome. Thank you, NBZ. That's
no problem.
That's an interesting list.
An interesting list indeed.
So I think that wraps up this segment. Catch us after this, and we're going to talk about our top games of the year.
About our games of the year. Dun dun dun. And this is going to be focused on Nintendo platforms, mainly 3DS, because Wii U, in all honesty, hasn't had a year to be worth mentioning.
What's a Wii U?
Yeah, I heard Nintendo came out with a new console.
Is that like an expansion for your Wii or something? Okay.
Oh God, let's
poor joke. Right, anyway.
Okay, so what we're going to do here, because we've talked quite a bit about a lot of these games which are in our top three, we didn't do a top three, we're just going to lay them out from the beginning, and then just have a chat about them and why we've ranked them in the order we have, and that kind of thing, and then we'll do some honourable mentions afterwards. So let's get into it. Bally, tell me, what are your top three games?
So my number 3 is actually not from this year, but it's what I've been playing a lot this year, and I really enjoy it, and that's Mario 3D Land. We talked about it earlier. My number 2, I picked up earlier this year, is Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, Luigi's Mansion 2. And then my number 1 for this year has to be Zelda Link Between Worlds.
Oh, what a surprise. I never saw that coming.
I know. I love it.
Yeah. So my top 3 are very similar, but there is one major difference. My number 3 is Luigi's Mansion 2, of course. Number 2 is Zelda. My number 1, it's got to be Fire Emblem, man. It's got to be Fire Emblem. And Fire Emblem Awakening fucking stole my heart. I'll tell you what, man. Literally, it really did. I was living within my 3DS for a week solid, and I didn't put it down. So yeah, let's discuss a little bit. 3D Land at 3 and Luigi at 2 and Zelda at 1. This very core Nintendo franchises you got going on there. What was it that made Zelda stand out from the rest and be the number 1? Is it more to do with you've recently played it, or do you think that it is generally better than the other 2 games?
I do think it's generally better than the other 2. Like we've already said numerous times on the show, it's just such a streamlined experience. I love the ending. I already said that this show.
I think that something that's important to say is it's one of the fastest times you've ever completed a game. So somewhat has to do with the fact that we're doing a podcast and you want to be relevant and talking about it.
True.
But it also it lends to how compelling the experience is that you're able to just go through it.
Yeah, you should maybe explain that I really don't complete games very fast at all, and maybe that's hinted at by the fact that I'm completing 3D Land years later. But yeah, I really am not a big game completionist in general. So for me to just sort of buy a Zelda and complete it in the space of like under 2 weeks, just about, I think is a first for me personally.
Yeah, it's something that you generally just don't do. You'll buy a few games and they will sustain you for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But, this one was just like pedal to the metal, man. Pedal to the metal. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Zelda is a sterling choice, and is why it's at my number 2. It's just one of those fantastic experiences. Let's talk a bit about Luigi, because we haven't really talked a huge amount about that. We did mention it at the beginning of the first show when you did your kind of what you've been playing. Yeah. But I think Luigi is such an interesting game because it's one of those things where putting it in a genre is very difficult. I find like there's no real like genre that jumps out to me. Like it's a puzzle game, but there's action elements and it's mission based, and it's really this like hybrid of ideas that come together into this really well realized package that I enjoyed a huge amount, and that's why it's on my list.
Yeah, I really liked what they did with this game. I am a fan of the level design and the fact that you have specific level segments rather than a whole world altogether. But yeah, I love this game. It's really streamlined. We're using that word an awful lot today. But it's just a great game in general. I think I had played the Next Level Games game before, and that was Strikers Charged on the Wii, and I loved it. And this game is just completely different. I would say that some of the cutscenes look the same, and they have a real vibrant, a lot of texture and color, and very exciting cutscenes in both.
It's interesting that you bring up the idea of color, because with this being like a horror themed game and based around ghosts,
horror themed is a bit rich, maybe.
Well, it is horror themed because it is
degree,
based in mansions, and ghosts are the main enemies, and Luigi's going around with a flashlight and he's shitting his pants the entire game. And so it does have that element to it, which is interesting because the game is so vibrant when it comes to the visual aspects. Like the 3D is incredibly good. The colors kind of just pop out, and it's just one of those things where you don't expect that type of a game to be so jump off the page, as it were.
That is a good point, that it is like this dark themed game, yet it's so colourful, and I think they were really clever in the level design. So for example, the second mansion is it's sort of leafy and green, and that's nothing like the first game. And likewise, I think the fourth mansion is all blue and icy, and it's a really, really vibrant cutscenes and colors, and that's so unlike, for example, even the first mansion, which is quite dark in general, but still more vibrant than the old game.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this game is because they placed it in a mission structure, and because they had multiple mansions, it allowed them to use different ideas and put Luigi in different settings. So in the first mansion, it had to be very cohesive because it was one building, and you couldn't really diverge from that theme. It was just Ghost Mansion, and there were different areas, but it was very much like, this is a mansion setting. There's no like kind of ice area or deserty area, and there's not as much variation in types of enemies like you get with the mummy ghost, and you get with that boss in the ice world. That kind of difference there, which I like a huge amount, and it means that you never like hit like a stopping block where you're like, I'm bored with the setting and the look of this game, whereas you're constantly moving through different environments, and it propels you, I feel. So
cool,
very good.
Why don't you talk a bit about your favorite game of the year then?
So the reason Fire Emblem is at number one, and the reason it's at the top of my list, is not just because it's a Fire Emblem game and because I'm a Fire Emblem like fanatic, but this is the Ocarina of Time of the Fire Emblem franchise. This is where it hits. This is where it hits the mainstream and is critically received like effusively, and just realizes so many of the franchise's key aspects in amazing ways. It takes that core gameplay and layers on the story, but in a way that they've never done before. It's so much more cinematic. You have the cutscenes, you have the plot, which is much more interesting and nuanced than it's ever been before, and you have characters which are much more relatable because you see them in the cutscenes, and you have voice acting and dialogue and all that kind of stuff over the top of what the game was originally. It's no longer just reading text. There is a lot of that, but you have much more of a sense of who these people are and the world they live in. And there's just so much to do. There's so much content. There's the DLC stuff that they've been putting in there. There's all of these support conversations, and the system, which I think is the most interesting, and the thing which makes it stand apart from other games, is the marriage system and having children, which sounds ridiculous, and it is ridiculous because you essentially gain support levels in a way that is much more meaningful in this game, where you can pair characters up instead of just having them stand next to each other and gain boosts and bonuses. And that's a thing like in previous Fire Emblem games where, in Sacred Stones, and you've played that, and have you ever really used the support system in that game at all?
I try to. I've not really seen the benefits of it yet to any degree, but I enjoy sort of the cutscenes and things, and sort of some of the cringe moments of them flirting with each other. But
yeah, that is kind of funny.
it is good. It's good fun. Yeah, I do enjoy it. And it's like you were saying earlier, like the whole, this is with Fire Emblem in general, but that linking of the story through the mechanics is quite nice, and I do enjoy that aspect.
Definitely, especially because Fire Emblem makes death meaningful. If you lose someone, they are gone, and they are gone from that storyline, which
is what is making it take so long for me.
Yeah, but because if you are a perfectionist, you do not want people to die, and
Yeah.
you will just continue and continue. Definitely.
Cool.
But you've never really used the support system in battle, have you?
I don't know. How do you do that?
So, well, exactly. That's the thing. It doesn't really explain
Yeah,
itself
nothing. It
that
doesn't
well.
explain anything. I'd have to live through you to play it. It's ridiculous. But anyway,
Yeah.
I will be speaking about it in future.
So you basically, if you stand next to another character, you gain a boost if you have a support level with them. So I can't remember what the boosts really are. in the
I know
GBA
that,
games.
but I don't see it happen. There's nothing that tells me it's happening. I just kind of know it's happening.
You need to look at the differences if they're standing next to someone you're attacking, or if you're not standing next to someone attacking, and that's really the only way you'd know.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But in this game, it's much more transparent, where you pair people up, and if they have high support level, you'll get into situations where if one of them is being attacked, then the other one will jump in front of them and block the attack. Or if one of them is attacking someone else, the other one will jump in and do a second attack. So you get to this point where you get somewhat overpowered with characters if you're playing on a difficulty which isn't too hard. So you'll have just like these wrecking crews with just pairs of units who just go together and just basically plow through entire armies and cannot be stopped, and it's extremely satisfying when you get to that point, because you're like, I am undefeatable, I am the greatest, and it's a really fantastic feedback loop there. And there's so much more depth into the post game and the character development and character building, because they implement a system of skills where you can change your class as many times as you want, but if you go through another class, you gain access to the skills that class has. And so there's a particular class, which is the Pegasus class, which gains access to an ability called Gale Wings. God, I'm getting mixed up with Pokemon. Gale Wings is a Pokemon ability. Gale Force, I think. Gale Force. Gale Force is where you get to attack so if you kill an enemy in a turn, you get to attack again. So as long as you kill something, you get a second attack. That is a really, really good ability. And so what a lot of this game, if you want to maximize it, is making sure that you marry people who have that Pegasus line to other people, and pass down the ability to become a Pegasus so that the child has access to Gale Force, and that's kind of like the meta game of it all, trying to get those skills passed down. And there's loads of cool combinations you can do, but man, this game is fantastic, and I have talked a fuck ton about it, so I better shut up now and talk about some other stuff. But yeah, if you haven't played Fire Emblem, do it.
Yeah,
do it.
Cool.
It means you, Bali. It means you.
Yeah, no, I'm very much a part of that crowd who've just been lectured to. Yes, absolutely.
Indeed.
So what about other non-Nintendo games that really stood out to you this year?
There's a lot. There's actually on Wii U. I want to talk about Rayman Legends, because that wasn't in my top 3, but I still think it's worth mentioning. It's very, very solid, and the new reboot of Rayman is something I only kind of fell into this year, because I got Rayman Origins in the Steam sale, and I was like, okay, I'll try it and see what it's like. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was like, wow, this is really great, and this is doing something with 2D platformers, which Nintendo are really missing the mark with Mario right now on the new Super Mario Brothers games. It's just so much more refreshing and interesting is what they're doing. And so because of that, I picked up Legends on Wii U. Specifically on Wii U, I could have got it on Steam, I could have got it on PS3, went with the Wii U version because of the touchscreen stuff, the touch implementation, which I will say is not the best stuff in the game. And I feel like it's much more interesting in multiplayer, and we have yet to do that, but I'll definitely try and do some of that over the holidays with you and do some Rayman multiplayer and see how that works. But in single player, a lot of it's relying on the AI to kind of go in directions, and they mess up a lot, so it's a little bit clumsy, but it's still a lot better experience than doing it on a platform which doesn't have touch abilities. Do you want to talk a little bit about Mario U, because you played that as well this year, even though it's not really making your list? What do you think of that in general, kind of relating to Rayman?
Oh, well, relating to Rayman, I fully appreciate that it's far less original. And I mean, this is only the second sort of new Super Mario Brothers game I've bought. So I bought the original DS one yonks ago, and missed the two in the middle and bought this one. So it was fresh. It looks stunning in the HD, in the graphical department, but at the same time, it's not really that original. But I still really like it. Actually, and you've experienced this, some of the best parts of that game I really like are sort of the side missions, where there's all these timed missions and special missions where you have to jump on Goombas without touching the floor and stuff like that, that I think that isn't really talked about enough with that game, that it adds a real dimension to, because ultimately I've actually probably played more of that aspect of the game than the story mode at this point in time.
Yeah, that stuff is fantastic, and I really enjoyed what we did when we had our time with that. So
yeah, no, it was good.
Yeah,
definitely try and squeeze that in the holidays as well.
Well, it's too much to do, man.
Too much to do in the holidays. But anyway, have you got a final game that you'd love to give a shout out to for
God,
this year?
like I've got.
I know you wanted to mention something else about Tearaway.
Oh, I did. Yeah. I mean, I talked about Tearaway already, but that's totally in contention for one of my games of the year. It's really great. The thing that I didn't mention was the sound design. When I was talking about it earlier, sound design in that game is fantastic. Just because it's set in a paper world, and that's not a setting you see that often. Obviously, there's Paper Mario, but Paper Mario doesn't do the same things as this game. And so, for example, when you're walking on paper and it like kind of crinkles beneath your feet, and really like kind of satisfying sounds. And I think sound design is something that's really underappreciated in a lot of games. It's one of the aspects which I love about Metroid Fusion. There's all these clicks and clunks about the game which just really kind of hone in onto the gameplay, because you're just more engaged with how that works. And that's something I really like about that game. So yeah, Tearaway, fantastic. Definitely on my list. The two games that I want to bring up are Guacamelee, which I played on PS3 this year. Is a Metroidvania style game, and I utterly devoured it. I beat it in 3 days. I just went through it. It is super fucking challenging. The last two bosses of that game are some of the toughest stuff I have had to deal with in gaming in general. Like, it is so difficult, and you really need to be on the ball and thinking, and it's so satisfying though when you beat those guys. They are utterly satisfying and amazing, and it's just one of those games that speaks to me. I am someone who loves a 2D Metroid style game, and anyone that comes along I will utterly just gorge on, and that's what I did with Guacamelee. So that's right up my list. And the final thing I want to talk about is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is a transcendent experience. It is one of those games where there is a mesh between the gameplay and the narrative that is achieved by so few games. I think that Journey is one that does it, and that's really all that I can really think of. There's no dialogue. The story is completely told through the environment and the interaction between the brothers. They talk in like a kind of Simlish gibberish language, so you never really understand what they're saying, but it's very much implied by animations they do and that kind of thing. And the ending of that game is one of the most incredible experiences that I've had in games in general. And I say that it is something I would recommend to anyone. It's a 3-hour experience. Sit down, play it in one sitting, and just enjoy. It is amazing. That game is fantastic, and probably my game of the year in general. High praise, but really, really great. So that's that. That's the other stuff that I really think deserves the spotlight. And there we go. So it's going to close out our segment here on our games of the year. Next show, we'll hopefully be doing some kind of counterpoint to this by predictions and predicting what will happen in the year to come in Nintendo and games in general. And so look forward to that. But this is basically the end of the show. So this is pretty much we're going to close it out.
Plugs.
So we'll do some plugs. So, Bally, what do you want to say for your Twitters and that kind of thing?
Twitters and the Facebook. Not Facebook. But yes, follow me on Twitter. I'm at Ballyman91. That's BAYY. BALLYMAN 91. Can't spell my bloody name. You can also follow me on Miiverse under the same name.
Yes, I echo that sentiment. I am at Lordnbz on Twitter and Lordnbz on Miiverse. That stuff will be in the description because Bally can't spell, and it'll give you a quick link.
Send us more of your questions to NYPPQuestions at gmail.com as well, and we will continue with those. It's a good segment. We think we enjoy it, so.
Yeah, definitely. It was a much better turnout this week, and that was great. So just keep giving them in, and if you're new and listening to the show and you think maybe you have an interesting question, just send us our way, and we get some different people as well, which would be really cool. So that is going to be it for the show. But thank you very much for listening. And until next time, hope you have a good Christmas and all that good stuff, and play some games over that period. I know that we certainly will be, and we will be back in the new year to discuss some fresh stuff. So thank you, Bally, for joining me.
Thank you, NBZ, for having me.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye.